5 of our Vote Builder certification course. Today we're just going to talk Targeting 101, which sort of builds upon what we had last discussed in list building. A lot of the steps that you took in list building are still going to apply here. This is more of the theoretical framework and the thought process behind who we are targeting. When we did the list building, we were looking at folks that were in apartments in Lexington, that were Democrats, that were new registered young Dems. That is just an example I created. With this one, we're going to go more in depth of what folks actually build their universes, how folks actually build their universes to contact voters. So the thing to sort of start out by saying is strategic voter outreach starts with a people, not a program. We're thinking about who we need to reach, what ways, again, who we need to reach, what we need them to do, what mediums, messages, and which messengers are going to be the most effective at getting those people to actually do what we want them to do. So who do we need to reach? Voters, but not all voters are created equal. Folks that are going to be your stronger Democratic voters may not need as much contact. Folks that are your likely Republican voters, you might want to cut out unless there's some things that you need to do to flip them. Folks in the middle, that is sort of where it comes down to. What do we need them to do? We need those folks in the middle to vote for our Democrat. Those folks that are a strong Democrat to stay strong Democrat. And then that sort of gives you the thought of what medium are going to send them texts, knock their door, do phone calls, digital ads, mail. What is going to be the best way to get a hold of those folks? Your older voters, you can probably just call. Younger voters, you might have to knock on their door or send them a text because they're not going to answer a call. Things like that. What message is going to be best for those folks? What types of issues is definitely one of the thoughts of messaging are going to sway them. Are these going to be folks that are economic focused? Are they going to be folks that are social issues focused? Are some of these issues, no matter how much they might agree with some of them, are they going to be like one issue voters? What's going to be the best way to get the intended message that we want to deliver to them so that they will vote for us? And the messenger is going to be better for the candidate to talk to those folks. That might be somewhere that's in some of the more 50-50, even more Republican districts. They might not have as much of a positive interaction with your volunteers, but the candidate's family might be able to have a higher level conversation with those folks and sort of make those better connections. Is it a strong Democratic area? Like, if you're going to do that, you can probably send your volunteers. Is there a valued member of that community that a lot of folks listen to? Those types of things are what we mean by messenger. What is going to be the most effective way to have what we want to have happen? Voter targeting is going to start with a who, but a lot of these questions are going to be interconnected. Targeting should be rooted in your strategic framework, your overall strategic framework, connected across programs, not just multiple distinct polling lists. So like what we were doing to sort of show everyone what list building was in those different steps. A lot of the folks that you're going to be talking to and pulling in lists, you need to be contacting them over and over via various means. Text, calls, doors, mail, digital, etc., etc. making sure they are getting inundated with contacts about the candidate. So we start with framing, targeting questions. How do we win? Who are the people to move? What are the most efficient programs for moving these folks? And those are the top 3 questions that's sort of like should be in the back of your mind when you're thinking of who you need to talk to. If we had unlimited resources, of course, we would want to talk to every voter, but campaigns don't have unlimited resources, and having really good targeting is going to be is going to have a strong impact. If you don't have as good of targeting, you might not be spending money where you need to. So we sort of just went over a lot of the sort of things, sort of the framework to think of, some of the nuggets of information that we discussed, or what you want to sort of be thinking of as you start building these universes. And then here we're going to talk about like what information do we actually have to target the voters that could be very beneficial to talking to these folks and identifying them in the vote builder. So first we have contact history. This one's going to be a little iffy, dependent upon the campaign. If you're a previous candidate, or if you're an incumbent or a previous candidate and you've ran before, you'll probably have contact from the last couple of times that you've ran. If you're a new candidate, this might not be something that you do have. But as you are building universes for the long haul, definitely think, hey, right now it might be February and I am building out the universes for my campaign, but by the time we reach May, we'll have probably done X attempts, and we want to go ahead and know that while this doesn't exist now, it will exist in the future, so we want to take that into consideration. So things that are included in contact history are going to be your support IDs. So if you talk to them in March and they're a supporter, come the primary in May, you want to make sure that you're getting them out the vote. Issue IDs, this is one that's a little more iffy. Issue IDs are very, very valuable, I feel, but I've definitely seen a lot of candidates or campaigns just asking issue IDs to ask issue IDs without building the data into their programs. I think when it comes to issue IDs, if you're going to ask it, make sure there's going to be something that you're doing later on that can do it. So for instance, if you're doing a large listening pass early in the campaign, make sure those folks that say, yes, I care about the economy, care about these issues, they get something as it gets closer to election day. That way, you are able to sort of show them, yes, we were listening. Here's where the candidate stands. For instance, when I was in San Antonio, we had an issue ID, and around a few weeks after we'd been gathering these IDs, invested in small little postcards that already had that issue ID postcards that already had what the candidate's stances and beliefs were on all the issues. That way, week after week, we were able to just pull those folks with those issue IDs, get them out the door, so that folks could at least get some sort of follow-up. Historical data from past campaigns. This is the one where it'll be a little different cycle to cycle. One thing that we do try to make sure that folks have are master survey questions from previous cycles. So the thing that every single survey question gets mapped back to for specific campaigns. So all state house candidates have a state house master survey question, same for state senate, Congress, U.S. Senate, local campaigns. That way, when we move into future cycles, we'll be able to use those for targeting. That's one thing to take into consideration. That will probably be available. Moving on, demographics is going to be another thing that you'll want to think about. Race, age, gender, education level, geography, things like these can be some of the things that, as you know your district, who your voters are, can build those in. Younger voters in your area might be more Democratic, might want to sort of saturate the universe with those folks. I think we've all seen that suburban women have voted more Democratic since 2016 because of who was in office, education levels, folks that have that are more educated, more likely to vote more Democrat, things like that take into consideration. Next, we're going to talk about scores. So when it comes to scores, we will talk in depth about this, but common scores are a support score, a turnout score, a persuadability score, traits like race, education, language. Here in Kentucky, we don't get race on the voter file, so a score subsidizes that in our Vote Builder committee. And one big one that is a little more difficult to explain is contactability. But in a nutshell, it's throughout cycles, as we're contacting folks, the DNC is able to sort of take a lot of that information, especially phone data, whether it's just calls or texts, put that into a contactability model that says this is the likelihood you'll have a conversation with this person, likelihood this phone number is bad, things of that nature, which tie into scores, but aren't available in the front end. Well, are available in the front end, but not as much as like a support or a turnout score, are things to take into consideration. Most of the things were fairly common sense. The one that's not is going to be the scores, which we sort of I wanted to make sure folks had a little bit of a deeper dive, but not like too deep. So when we talk about scores or models, a model is built that then produces a score. Scores and models are supposed to make targeting easier at scale, so that you're not having to go in, build 10 different steps to figure things out, or longer. I've seen search results that are way longer. So the best example I have is with scores. A turnout score is taking in a lot of a person's previous vote history and spitting out a probability they will vote in an intended election, which scores overall are a probability to predict whether something will happen or not. So predictive model crash course. Let's say this is the entire district that we have. All of these folks are an entire voting population. When it comes to modeling, we take a segment of those folks, ask them what they think, and then using some arithmetic, try and figure out, based upon this data, how it'll apply to the entire district. So everyone sort of knows this. As you go along this scale, you'll see numbers. So what would go in Y type of thinking. And that is sort of how models are built. So in this one, we're going -1, 2, 0, 4. So we see it's going up every time, 2 every time. So here in 2 would be an 8. And from that information, that we got from these folks, it's then applied to the rest of the population. And we sort of see the different color schemes. So red is going to be Republican, blue is going to be Democrat, lighter is going to be like they might not. So that sort of leads into what is the output of the model. So 0 is they have a very low likelihood of supporting Democrats. 100, they have a very high likelihood of supporting Democrats. Then there are the folks in the middle, a 25, a 50, a 75, for instance. So a person that is a 75, that doesn't mean that, since this is a probability, isn't measuring intensity. More or less, this is saying 75 out of 100 people that fit the demographics and information that we were provided about uh, the voter means that 75 out of 100 are likely to vote Democrat. Um, so think about that, whether it's support, which we just went over, or turnout. 75 out of 100 people are likely to turn out in an election, for instance, would be what a turnout model is saying. So what type of universes do we want to build? Now we're going to bring things together. If you're just wanting to do turnout, get people out to vote, GOTV. This is sort of like what we just saw in a targeting box. So the folks that are in these tier 1 GOTV targets are going to have high Democrat support scores, and they're going to have middling turnout scores. So these are people that are, yes, they will vote Democrat if we get them out to vote. So the example here that is given is 80 plus turnout, or 80 plus support with 30 to 69 turnout. You can sort of slide those numbers as capacity is needed or as your win number is needed to get to. I know I do that a ton. I sort of start with the usual thought and then expand as needed. What happens if you're wanting to do persuasion ID, however, when it comes to targeting? So getting people to support you. One thing that exists is a persuasion score. So the ones that the DNC and other folks build are usually like a -10 to a +10. I'm going to avoid talking about that one because that one's much trickier to discuss. But usually a issue score, very similar to other scores that we talked about. So they would have a high issue score, a mid support score. So you're talking to people that will be very caring about the environment, gun control, the economy, but we don't know anything about them, or they're not likely to support you, but they might be in that middling range for a reason. So these are folks that, again, we don't have as much information about. It's not necessarily they're not going to support you. Again, like a 20 score is like 20 out of 100. So you'd be able to hopefully use this issue score to start identifying those 20 out of 100, 50 out of 100 that would be supporting you by using this. And overall, like, another thing you could say with ID is, if you're not going to want to use persuasion or issue scores, dropping down to a 20 plus support score, 20 plus turnout, 30 plus turnout, somewhere in there. That way you're sort of IDing the universe that you think is going to be most likely to support you. Customizing the universes, every candidate and campaign is going to have slightly different targets. That's something that just needs to be said, whether you're working together a lot with other campaigns. Definitely have the mindset of do be talking to the folks that you need to talk to. So with that, how do you sort of make sure your universes are what they should be? That is going to be done through model validation. does the model work for you? If you have a turnout universe that is like a 70 or 80 plus support score, and for some reason you're getting a lot more Republican IDs than Democratic IDs, there might be something wrong with that model. You might want to adjust and use another one. This is going to help you pick the best model available. Usually, while you might be using one model, you can see what your ID rate would be in other models. If voters aren't supporting you at expected rates, so if you are using like a 40 plus support and you see you're getting a lot of Republican IDs in it, take it up to a 60 plus support. When it comes to GOTV, in the outreach you're doing then, make sure you add your positive support IDs to the GOTV universe. If you've had contact with them, they said they're a supporter, we want to make sure they get out the vote. On the flip side, if they said they're not going to support you, take them out of all universes. No reason to go after them and continue going after them, reminding them to vote against you. Polling. Based upon polling, you'll be able to segment scripts and messaging based upon the results you get back. So you might see issues X, Y, and Z fit better with population 1. You might see issues J, K, L fit with 2. So when you are building universes, you could sort of go after these folks, develop very specific messaging that fits along with what you're seeing in your polling. Some other considerations: what's your win number? Always keep that in mind. That way, as you are building your universe, you can see how far the parameters you're using are getting you to that win number, which will sort of let you adjust some of the universe inputs. The main thing I usually say is build a larger contact universe. If you need 500 votes, don't build a universe of 500 people. Try and get up to 750. Try to make sure your universe is going to be larger. That way you are compensating a little bit for finding IDs that will go against you, as well as making voter contact that your volunteers are going to run a little bit easier. If you have a universe of 500 people and you're in 10 precincts, 50 people per precinct, it's probably not going to make the most knockable walk universe. If you have a 750 or 1,000 door universe and 10 precincts, that's 775 or 100 doors per precinct. Definitely think about that as well, since volunteers are going to be helping you talk to voters, and you want to make it a pleasant experience on their part. Phone universe, what do we have? Hone in targeting via even more scores. So your universe might be the 60 plus support, 30 to 69 turnout for a GOTV universe, and then you're going to do phone calls to these folks. You can add in a phone quality score to make sure they're going to be folks that you might actually have a better chance of contacting. Potentially add voters based upon the candidate's strengths. This is one that I definitely did in 2020 for folks. Definitely for our candidates that were educators. Sort of built in some of the folks that we knew were educators into their lists. That way they could have those conversations. Another thing is build in Canvas results automatically, which are going to help update your universe. So if you build this in the very front saying, yes, this is my master universe, I'm going to go ahead and start building in this step to say anyone that's been refused, deceased, hostile, supports my opponent, we're going to remove those folks. While it might not be something you notice at first, as you continue doing voter contact, you're going to see those folks get weeded out automatically instead of you having to go back and refresh it every time. So targeting in coordination with the programs that you're going to do. You want to make sure you're starting with all the voters you'd want to talk to, then prioritize those targets based upon your budget and your capacity. So like we see in this one, we're going to start with all voters. And then we're going to do some targeting, and this big blue box is going to get cut down to like half, to the green part where it's all targeted voters. So while all these voters are targets, we can only see like we'll call that 75% can get hit with digital ads. Only 55 with mail. 70 with canvassing. So we're going to be hitting all of these folks. We're going to be hitting these folks, but we don't have the budget to hit every one of them in every single way. So from knowing that, we can sort of say what's the low estimate, what's a medium estimate, and what's a high estimate of our capacity. So low estimate is tier 1, medium estimate is you're going to be your tier 2 targets, high tier 3. So tier 1, these are going to be the best targets we want to talk to across all mediums. They're in this tier. We want to make sure we hit them and hit them hard. If we get more money, more capacity, we can go down the tier 2. If everything is gravy, you have all the money, all the volunteers, you can hit tier 3. If you're getting to tier 4, talk to anyone that you would like, and everything is like golden. This is going to be all the remaining voters you would want to talk to. So this isn't going to be like every single registered voter, but there might be some Democrats and independents in tier 4 that weren't in any of these that you can then hit up. With that, we have reached the end. I think the main things for folks to take away from targeting is going to be, think about your win number. Think about when building the universes, what some of those, what is going to be best for you, support score wise, turnout score wise. In addition, what are some of the dynamics of the race, of the district? That'll be a boon that you can build into the program. And then sort of make sure those thoughts are supported based upon what you see, based upon validation. If there's something that looks a little weird in validation, tweak everything. And then sort of once you have everything set up, say this is the folks that I would want to target, sort of be able to start assessing your capacity, whether it's how much money the campaign has or is likely to have, how many volunteers you have now, how many you need to get to, and sort of, like we just see on this screen, build out those tiers. That way we know, have some very reasonable, ideas of what they can get accomplished, and then expand from there. With that, I'm going to start wrapping this up. Hopefully this gave folks a little bit of the theory behind targeting, some best practices, some good thoughts, and y'all are ready to sort of go out and do it on your own. With this, again, there will be a quiz in the Moodle account that we have. I'll attach the slide deck as well. And then after this, we're going to start talking about some of the different ways that we actually contact voters. So canvassing, cutting turf, phone banking are going to be the next few trainings. That way, everything we've sort of learned so far, we'll be able to go ahead and start putting into practice and getting folks trained on that. Talk to everyone in the next round, and hopefully everyone found this informative.